China has abruptly suspended all liquefied natural gas, LNG imports from the United States, a move that instantly disrupted global energy markets. The halted trade flow, valued at approximately $2.4 billion annually, is one of the most significant economic blows between the two countries in recent months. China's suspension of U.S. LNG imports is not just a trade decision, it's a calculated geopolitical message. Just 1 month ago, the U.S. government implemented a 10% tariff on a wide range of Chinese goods, citing concerns over trade imbalances, intellectual property violations, and strategic competition. Beijing's response has been swift and deliberately targeted. By hitting the energy sector, China is signaling it's willing to strike where it hurts economically and symbolically. Liquefied natural gas has become a flagship U.S. export, emblematic of American energy independence and influence. Cutting off LNG deals directly affects U.S. producers, especially those in Texas and Louisiana, and puts pressure on both the private sector and political leadership in Washington. But this is more than just tit-for-tat economics. China's move suggests a new phase in U.S.-China tensions, where core resources like energy and food may be weaponized. Not unlike how technology and semiconductors have been in recent years. It reflects a shift from passive resistance to active economic countermeasures. Analysts warn this retaliation could widen. If China expands its restrictions beyond LNG to sectors like agriculture, aviation, or finance, it may ignite a broader economic confrontation, affecting global supply chains and investor sentiment. The message is clear. If the U.S. escalates pressure, China will not only retaliate, it will reshape trade flows in the process, even if that means aligning more closely with regions like the EU or the Global South. After suspending LNG imports from the U.S., China wasted no time in rerouting its energy strategy, this time toward Europe. In the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Europe has been in urgent need of diversifying away from Russian gas. LNG imports have surged, with countries like Germany, France, and the Netherlands aggressively expanding terminal capacity and signing long-term supply agreements. For China, this demand presents both an economic opportunity and a geopolitical lever. By stepping in as a major supplier, or intermediary trader, China positions itself as a stabilizer in a disrupted market, even as it continues to secure long-term energy deals with the Middle East and Africa. The redirection of LNG flows means China can undercut U.S. influence in Europe, particularly at a time when Washington is trying to consolidate Western alliances through both NATO and energy partnerships. This pivot also signals a broader Chinese strategy to build asymmetric influence by filling voids left by sanctions and conflict. While the West isolates Russia, China quietly reconfigures supply chains to its advantage, not through confrontation, but through availability and timing. What's more, China's growing role in Europe's energy security could create strategic dilemmas for EU policymakers. Balancing climate goals, economic interests, and alliance politics becomes even harder when one of your top suppliers also happens to be your top competitor. In short, this isn't just about cargo ships. It's about control of the flow of power, both literally and metaphorically. China's exit from the U.S. LNG buyer list is more than a trade setback. It's a strategic blow to the United States' global energy ambitions. Before the suspension, China was the second largest importer of American LNG, trailing only South Korea. This relationship wasn't just commercial. It was central to Washington's broader push to use energy exports as a tool of economic diplomacy. The goal was clear: turn America's shale gas boom into leverage on the world stage. Now that strategy faces a reality check. With China out, U.S. LNG producers are staring at a $2.4 billion hole in demand. That surplus gas must now find alternative buyers, most likely in South Asia, Europe, or Latin America. But these regions are already competitive, price-sensitive, and in some cases, constrained by infrastructure. In the short term, this could mean lower margins for U.S. exporters, more spot market volatility, and possible delays in planned expansion projects along the Gulf Coast. For workers and local economies tied to LNG facilities in Texas, Louisiana, and Pennsylvania, the impact may trickle down in the form of slowed hiring or deferred investments. But the larger concern is strategic. The loss of China exposes the fragility of U.S. energy diplomacy, which has often assumed that economic logic would override political tension. It also raises tough questions. Can the U.S. continue to use energy as a geopolitical tool when access to key markets is vulnerable to retaliation? And how much can it rely on Europe to fill the gap, especially as EU nations diversify suppliers and ramp up renewables? Meanwhile, rivals like Qatar and Russia are eyeing this vacuum. With fewer restrictions, they can offer China long-term deals, even at discounted prices, further eroding America's competitive edge. In essence, the LNG standoff doesn't just impact shipments and contracts, it shakes the foundation of the U.S. energy export model and forces policymakers to reconsider how resilient and how political the global energy system has become. As U.S.-China energy tensions dominate headlines, an unexpected comment from the U.S. president has opened a new and highly sensitive diplomatic fault line. During a press event addressing North American trade and energy cooperation, the president casually remarked that perhaps someday Canada could be the 51st state. Though seemingly offhand and framed as hypothetical, the statement sent ripples across Canadian media and political circles, triggering swift backlash from Ottawa. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's office responded firmly, calling the remark inappropriate and unhelpful, while reaffirming Canada's sovereignty and independence. Opposition leaders were more direct, labeling it American arrogance disguised as humor. The comment comes at a delicate moment. Canada and the U.S. are critical energy and trade partners, with integrated infrastructure across oil, gas, and electricity. But they also hold different global postures. Canada emphasizes multilateralism and climate goals, while the U.S. continues to pursue aggressive strategic and economic positioning. For markets, the concern isn't that the comment reflects actual policy, but that it signals a more erratic tone in U.S. foreign relations. In an environment already filled with geopolitical uncertainty, even symbolic missteps can undermine confidence in alliance stability. Diplomatic analysts warn that rhetorical volatility from Washington, whether toward Canada, China, or elsewhere, risks weakening soft power and complicating long-term cooperation on shared interests, from Arctic policy to supply chain resilience. More broadly, the episode reinforces a key theme. In today's global market, language matters. Words from leaders, even off script, can shift narratives, fuel political reactions, and echo through investor sentiment. This latest disruption in the U.S.-China energy trade underscores how deeply geopolitical risks are now embedded in global markets. From tariffs to LNG, from trade wars to diplomatic friction, energy is no longer just economics. It's a battlefield of influence.